Okay, everybody. Good evening, everybody. And I would like to welcome you to our start of the evening track. There is probably no need to introduce our speaker, FX from PhenoElite. And he's going to talk us the next hour through the question of what to do with barcodes and what fun to have with them. Due to the short time constraints, would you please keep your questions to the end? We'll have microphones ready for you. And now, FX, you have it.
Thank you. So, thank you for showing up. This talk is in English. I quit the poll if it should be in German or English. Yeah, we talk about barcodes. Nothing more boring than that. We do a quick intro into barcodes, really quick intro. We talk about encoding and decoding, scanners, some tricks you can play with the barcodes themselves, with the backend systems. We look at some selected samples that we decoded for you, and some unsolved cases that we decoded, but we don't know what the shit is meaning. And we close, as the good hackers we are, with some notes on principles how to use barcodes securely if you happen to be in a situation to implement them. Now, since the dawn of new legislation in Germany, we need disclaimers. So, dear audience, this talk covers observation made of widely used and well-documented systems. So, dear law enforcement, yeah, that's you with the internet printout. You can keep your anti-hacker tool laws under the table because we only need brains and printers. History of barcodes. Really quick because that's boring. The only thing that's really interesting is it was invented in 48, and then the first people to really try it was the American railroad system. And what's interesting about that is it took them actually 17 years to develop the system. Then it took them another 7 years to label the cards, and then they realized it didn't work. In contrast to that, the National Food Association, or National Association for Food Chains rather, in '66 came up with the idea to save money to make the checkout in a supermarket faster. And the idea actually kind of worked. So in '69, they requested an industry standard, which later became UPC, the most widely used barcode on products in the world. And in '81, barcodes really took off when the US Department of Defense required code 38 to be labeled on everything they buy, which includes like military toilet paper in camouflage and tanks and whatnot. So let's dive into barcodes. Barcode people talk about symbologies. It's really funny because not even Microsoft Word knows this word and keeps saying it's spelled wrong. Essentially, symbologies is their way of saying encoding. Barcodes are nothing else than just an optical encoding on characters. In a talk yesterday, someone said they're like fonts. This is not correct. The thing is that barcode, the length of the encoded byte changes depending on where in a barcode it is. So here we have some selected symbologies. I'm not going to read all of those to you. The most important, most of you probably know EAN13. That's the stuff on your grocery store shopping list when you go in Germany, or UPC when you go in the United States. I collected some of them. The Interleaf 2 of 5 is one of the more widely used barcodes. They differ in encoding, they differ in error correction, and what is for us important, because we don't care about error correction, either it beeps or not, the character set. And from like the later barcodes start to become interesting because they support characters or full ASCII as the code 128, of which we will hear more of later. Then we have weird-ass barcodes. I'm sure you've seen the upper one printed on envelopes of letters that you receive from people you don't like Polizeipräsident or insurances or other people. That's the Postnet barcode. The Brits, of course, have their own British post office barcode. But those are also barcodes. They're not decoration. And then we have two-dimensional symbologies, and then it becomes really interesting. We have PDF 417, of which we will hear a lot today. We have the most widely used because quite powerful data matrix. Data matrix is nice because you can recognize it every time. It has this solid line on the bottom and on the left, and then the dotted line on the right and on the top. And there's the small version that only has 1 square, and the big version that has 4 squares, and you can easily extend it. Then there's Maxi code, which looks like an anthill, and I've only seen it on UPS parcel. And there's at-state code, of which Germans have seen a lot. Barcode generation. If we want to play with barcodes, we have to generate some. How do we do that? So there's a lot of software out there to do that. You don't have to do it yourself. I can highly recommend for 1D barcode GNU software, which I rarely do. In this case, it's GNU barcode. It actually works perfectly. You just feed it lots of strings that you want to have encoded. It selects the right encoding if you don't tell it which. And it produces PostScript, which you can send to your printer and then do something with the paper. There are online versions. You can just ask them, and there are uncountable commercial versions for generating barcodes. Writing your own generator is not really hard. So you can go to the right association and ask them for the standard of the barcode and then write your generator. And most specs are really cheap, about like $20, which next year is going to be like €3. So we got them generated. Now we have to read them because we want to know what's in the barcodes that we get handed every day. There are 2 essential ways to do that: hardware scanners or software. Barcode scanners, one-dimensional barcode scanners, are really, really cheap, especially if you go for CCD scanners, which are the ones with the LEDs instead of the laser. All scanners can be configured to output not just the barcode, but also the type of the barcode. So it will give you all the information you want. You can set the scanner essentially to verbose mode. You should not get a scanner that's better than the scanners that you're trying to attack later, if you would do so, which you don't. And more on this later. 2D scanners, unfortunately, are still very, very expensive. Now, decoding software, there's some free software. There is some software that can be paid by bytes instead of money. And I've chosen the extremely capitalist and simple way of just obtained a commercial decoding software. Because the reason is, I don't know how many of you know Max Moser, but if you ever try to decode a signal of which you don't know if the decoding is wrong or the stuff you see after the decoding, and you know how much that drives you crazy, you appreciate the fact that you can actually buy software that does the decoding for you and you only have to worry about the bytes later. So barcodes are essentially used for 3 different things. Either for simple tagging, put some number on some item, preferably solid, and scan it later. The second is data transport and virtual to physical media. 2-dimensional barcodes in special allow you to send data to someone who's going to transfer it from a virtual medium, like email, onto a physical medium, like paper, and bring it back to you, and it's still machine readable. And other bullshit, or as we call it in German, ganz grober Unfug. The first thing that's really interesting about the barcodes is how you configure the scanner. The scanner has 2 interfaces, one to the backside, to the computer, and one to you, where it scans. Now the interesting thing is it's configured about using the front side with special barcodes. Every vendor has a set of configuration barcodes, and there's one that says start configuration, and there's a lot of barcodes that change the configuration, and then there's one that says end and save the configuration. So, essentially, what you do is, first you try to find out what vendor actually made this barcode scanner. There are not so many on the market. Symbologics would be a good question, or Datalogic would be the market leaders. Then you get the configuration sheet, either from the vendor's website, which is quite normal, from the dealer's website, or you just call them up. And then you could reconfigure the scanner, which means you can change the supported barcode types. You can change if it's emitting character return line feed or not, or change the character encoding. especially interesting in places where they use characters with little dots on top of it. And they also have key codes like press escape or press page down or press delete. Which is interesting because most scanners are actually looped into the keyboard. So for the computer, there's no difference if the input comes from the barcode scanner or from the keyboard, which makes the escape key really interesting on MS-DOS type operation. And then I've actually seen, while preparing the slides, a scanner that would support software updates via configuration codes. So you could scan in the right configuration code and tell it to please read from the serial line interface that was hanging right next to it the next operating flash software that it needed, and then it would like flash his firmware and restart. Good. Coming to the barcodes themselves. It might be obvious, but I'm actually saying this because it's one of the most efficient things you can do with barcodes. If the barcode is already doing what you want and you just need more of it, go copy them. Don't try to understand what they're doing, don't fuck around, just copy them. This happened at PH Neutral. Some of them might know the conference. So at PH Neutral, there are two different types of badges. One badge is an attendee, the other one is an alcoholic. The alcoholics can actually put money on their badges and pay their beers at the bar with a badge, with a barcode. Now, Stefan Setz, who's also a speaker here, had this brilliant idea of taking a picture with his digital camera of one of those alcoholic badges, and then print it out again and like get beer for free. Which worked, and it got scanned, and he got authenticated. Unhappily, he copied the only one that was already used up. So no free beer for that attack. And then we have like entirely obvious situations. This is from a parking garage in Dresden. They don't have any connection between the card that you get when you drive in and the card that you put when you drive out. And essentially they have something called Saisonkarte or long time tickets. And they're valid for like ever. And you just copy them and put them on the internet, and everyone else in Dresden can park for free as well. Now, there was an entire talk on the recycling system in Germany yesterday. And I looked at it as well, but I didn't care about the bottles and like how they are parsed and blah, 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 because at the end of the day, I get a barcode and that's worth money. So I looked at the barcode. For everyone who's not German, you spend like half a day feeding your empty bottles in this machine, and then it spits out a voucher which you bring to the cashier, and he gives you money for that. Now, of course, there's this goal. The thing is, there was a huge discussion in the audience yesterday if there is a connection between the machine and the cashier system, or if it's one-time keys or whatnot. The fact that like punks in Berlin have exploited this for several years proves otherwise. So the obvious attack for the punks was get one ticket for like €5, go to the copy shop, spend like €1, get a bunch of tickets for €5, and go to different Kaisers and get a lot of money. So this is the reason why actually most shops now have some watermarking on the back side, because if the cashier takes the piece of paper, the barcode has to go down, so they scan it this way, and then they have to see if on the back side there's some fine print that says this is a Kaiser's voucher, whatever. Another indicator that there is no connection between the two is the following. There is the EAN13 code that's on those barcodes. Here we have some. Starts with a 2. Now, EAN13 usually starts with digits that identify the country that makes the stuff that you have the barcode on. Germany usually starts with 4 something. The leading 0 means it's store internal use. Now, store internal use means that your cache system has to be trained of this specific number, or parts of it, because if you look closely, you will see that the one says 55 cents ends on something 55.5, and then the one that says 25 cents ends on 25.1. Now, if you happen to know that the last digit is actually a check number, which is part of the barcode,